Hello! I'm so excited to share with you my newest cardigan creation, and it involves two different stitch patterns. The upper part, or the yoke, is called the iris stitch, and the lower part is called the Jacob's ladder stitch. And around the front edge and neck, I think I may have invented something new. I developed a way to incorporate the Jacob's ladder right on the edge. I think it ended up being a very creative and unique edging, and I may use this on other items. I used a size 4 weight acrylic yarn. It's the same yarn I used for the sunrise throw, and I loved how soft and durable it was, so I wanted to use it up. We will begin making one of the front panels, and it's worked from the top down, and this is the left front as you're looking at it, and so now we will start on the right front. I will be making a size small, but you can find further sizing instructions on my website at fastkittycrochet.com. I used a size J or 6mm crochet hook, and we will start with a chain 23. And it's helpful to begin with a long tail before you start your chain, because then we can use that later to stitch up the shoulder seam. When you reach the end of the chain, turn the chain over, and in the second chain from the hook, place one half double crochet and also half double crochet in the next chain. And now skip one chain, and we will place a V-stitch in the next chain. So just half double crochet, chain 2, and half double crochet in that same chain. And now skip 2 chains, and in the next chain place another V-stitch. And then just repeat this process by skipping 2 chains and V-stitch into the next chain until you get to the last 3 stitches, and you will be ending with skipping 1 stitch and half double crochet in the last 2 stitches. So here I am at those last 3 chains, so we'll skip 1 chain and then half double crochet into the last 2 chains. And so this completes row 1, and you should have 6 V-stitches. And so now for row 2, we'll chain 1, turn, half double crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, and place 3 half double crochets in each chain 2 space across the row. So here I'm placing my 3 half double crochets into the top of the V-stitch from the previous row. And we'll be ending this row with a half double crochet into those last 2 stitches. And then chain 1 and turn. Row 3 begins the same way as row 2 by placing a half double crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, and then locate that first 3 half double crochet group, and we will place a V-stitch into that middle stitch of the group. And so we'll repeat this process across the row we'll skip 2 stitches, and in the next stitch, which is the middle stitch from that 3 half double crochet group from the row before, and we'll place another V-stitch. And here is my last V-stitch of this row, and so we will end with a half double crochet in the last 2 stitches. Chain 1, turn, and so now for rows 4 through 12, we will just repeat rows 2 and 3, ending with a row 2. And so now we're at row 13, which begins the main part of the cardigan and is the beginning of the Jacob's ladder stitches. And so you'll see on the left front the spacing is a little different, and so while we're working on the right front, it will be the mirror image of the left front. And this row begins just like the other row 3s we were working on. So chain 1, half double crochet into the first 2 stitches, and then V-stitch into that center stitch of the 3 half double crochet group, and then make another V-stitch into the next group, and now go to that center stitch of that next 3 half double crochet group and place a half double crochet, and in that same stitch place another half double crochet, and now chain 8, and now we're going to slip stitch into those 2 side loops at the top of the half double crochet. And half double crochet one more time into that same stitch. And so we're going to repeat this process again, and we'll V-stitch into those next 2 groups. And now we're at that next group, and so into that middle stitch we'll place a half double crochet and half double crochet again, chain 8, and slip stitch into the top of the half double crochet into those 2 side loops, half double crochet into the same stitch, and then half double crochet into the last 2 stitches. And so here's what row 13 looks like, and so what you have is in the 3rd and the 6th V-stitch are your chain 8s. Oh, but hold on, I missed one thing. In the last stitch, place an extra half double crochet, so you'll have 2 half double crochets in the last stitch. And so for the left front, you'll be doing the opposite. So you will be beginning with 2 half double crochets in the first stitch, and then half double crochet in the next stitch, and then your loop stitches will be in the 1st and the 4th V-stitches, and then V-stitch into those last groups, ending with a half double crochet in the last 2 stitches. And now for row 14, chain 1, turn, and half double crochet in the first 4 stitches. Next we will push the loop towards the back, and then half double crochet right in the center of that chain 8 loop. And then half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and half double crochet one time in the next chain 2 space, and repeat this process across the row by placing 1 half double crochet in each stitch and 1 half double crochet in each chain 2 space, and remember to place a stitch into the center of the chain 8 loop. And so for row 15, chain 1, turn, and half double crochet into the first 9 stitches. And in the 10th stitch, half double crochet and chain 8. And slip stitch into the top of the half double crochet stitch, and then half double crochet into the next 8 stitches, and in the next stitch half double crochet, chain 8, and then slip stitch into the top of the half double crochet stitch again, ending with half double crochets in the last 4 stitches. And so now just repeat rows 14 and 15 for as long as you'd like your cardigan, ending with a row 14, and allow about 2 inches beyond that for the finishing rows and the bottom ribbing. I ended up having 11 of the chain 8 loop rows, 11 repeats of rows 14 and 15. And here I'm showing you, I only had 9 of the loop rows at this point, and I even completed all of the border, but I tried it on and it was a little too short, so I did frog it a bit and I added 2 more rows. But anyway, when you've completed your last row 14, after that, chain 1, turn, and then half double crochet in each stitch across. And now we can work on the fun part where I show you how to braid the loops together. Just go to the top of the loops and then take the second loop down and pull it through the first loop, and then keep going the next loop down, pull it through the loop before, and so on. And then repeat for the other row of loops. And the next row is an easy row of single crochets where we crochet down all of the ends of the loops. So chain 1, turn, and single crochet either 4 stitches or 9 stitches, and then either in the 5th stitch or the 10th stitch, depending on which front you're working on. That next stitch, you're going to insert your hook into the stitch, and then insert your hook into the last loop, and then proceed to finish your single crochet stitch. And then single crochet into the next 8 stitches. And in the next stitch, insert your hook, and then insert your hook into that last chain 8 loop, and then pull through your yarn and finish your single crochet stitch, and then finish the row with 9 more single crochet stitches, or if you're working on the other front, it will be 4 more single crochet stitches. And now we'll work on the bottom ribbing. So just chain 5, turn your work, and then in the second chain from the hook, single crochet and single crochet into the next 3 chains. So you'll have 4 single crochets into the side of the chain. And now we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 unworked stitches. And when I'm working on ribbing, at this point I like to turn my work to the left, and then from here we skip the 2 slip stitches, and then we're going to single crochet into the back loops of the next 4 stitches. And then chain 1, turn your work to the right. I like this turn left, turn right. It helps your work from getting too tangled. And then single crochet into the back loops of the previous row of single crochets. And again, we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 unworked stitches. And then just repeat this process till you get to the end of the row. And now here my 2 front panels are complete, and now we'll work on the back panel. It begins in the same way as a front panel. You just start with a chain of 53, and the Jacob's ladder portion of the back panel is spaced the same as your front panels, and you'll end up with 6 of the vertical braided rows. And here's a quick overview of the back panel. And when your front panels and back panel are complete, line them up as shown with wrong sides together, and then go ahead and stitch up your shoulder seams with the long tails you had. And when you've completed your seams, go ahead and open up your cardigan with your right side facing up and your seam is in the center. And now we're going to work on the first sleeve. And what we'll be doing is we'll be placing stitches into every other row along the side of the cardigan. And I'm pointing there with my hook where we're going. You can see a slight ridge in every other row of the half double crochet stitches. And we'll begin by joining our yarn at the bottom of the yoke, so it's at the bottom of the top portion where it meets the Jacob's ladder portion. And then chain 1 and half double crochet. Skip 1 row and then V-stitch into the next row at that point. And so what we're doing is repeating the stitch pattern we used for the yoke. And then skip 1 row and V-stitch into that next row. And so just keep going with a V-stitch in every other row, and you'll end up with a V-stitch at the seam with a total of 13 V-stitches across this sleeve section. And you'll be ending with your last half double crochet at the other side of the yoke section before you start the Jacob's ladder section. And here's my last half double crochet at the end of the yoke, and I'm counting my V-stitches, and I should have 13 V-stitches. And now chain 1 and turn. And half double crochet into the first stitch and place 3 half double crochets into the next chain 2 space, and repeat with 3 half double crochets in each chain 2 space across the row, ending with a half double crochet in the last stitch. And repeat rows 1 and 2 for as long as you'd like your sleeve, ending with a row 2. I ended up making mine 14 inches, and just allow about 1 1/4 inches for your cuff ribbing. And so I finished the length of the sleeve that I wanted, ending with a row 2. And now we'll start on the cuff. So we'll chain 5, turn, and this cuff ribbing is a little different. We're going to skip the first chain and slip stitch into the next chain, and then single crochet into the next 3 chains. Next we will slip stitch into the next 3 unworked stitches. So this is different from the bottom of the cardigan where we slip stitched 2 times. And it's easy to keep track because it's just along the 3 half double crochet group from the row before. And I've turned left again like I like to do, and then you just skip those first 3 slip stitches and then single crochet in the back loops of the next 3 single crochets, and then slip stitch into the back loop of that last slip stitch. Chain 1, turn, skip the first chain and slip stitch into the back loop of that first slip stitch, and then single crochet into the back loops of the next 3 single crochets. And then repeat this process until you're finished with your cuff. And here's what the cuff looks like when it's all complete. I like doing that slip stitch into that last stitch. It makes for a really nice sturdy and stretchy cuff. And now you can go ahead and fold your cardigan as shown, and then with your long tail, go ahead and stitch up the sleeve and side seam of the cardigan. And now we're going to work on the decorative loop border along the front and neck edges. On the right side, go ahead and turn your work, and on that first lower corner, join your yarn into the first stitch. And for this border, I did switch to a smaller hook, a size I or 5.5 millimeter. Chain 8, and slip stitch into that same first stitch. chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the beginning point of the ribbing. Chain 8, and slip stitch into that same point where you made your first slip stitch. Chain 2, and then skip 2 rows, and then we'll be placing our chain 8 loops at every other row, as I'm pointing there, around the entire front and neck edges. And now we'll chain 2, skip 2 rows, slip stitch, and make another chain 8 loop. And now just keep going with this process, and then I'll meet you when we get close to the neck edge. And here we are getting close to the neck edge, and I wanted to show you how you can adjust the tension, because I kind of went along the way I was going and I tried it on. It was a little too tight. So what I did was, instead of a chain 8, I made a chain 10, and then you can also do a chain 2 or a chain 3 between the rows. So it's up to you how tight you'd like your neck edge. And now I skipped the first V-stitch because it was a little close to the seam, but I'm placing my chain 8 or my chain 10 loops right at the points of all those V-stitches that go along the neck edge. And to finish the border, I'm placing the last chain 8 loop right at the top of the ribbing. And then I'll chain 2 and slip stitch into the last stitch of the ribbing. And now I'll show you how to braid these loops. Starting at that first loop, you'll see the chains have a right side and a wrong side. The wrong side has the row of bumps along the back, so you want to keep the right sides facing up and then braid like we did before. The second loop goes through the first loop, and then the next loop goes through the loop before. And just, you kind of have to keep twisting it a little bit to the left so that you keep the nice sides of the chain facing up. And when you come around to the last loop, you insert your loop through the previous loop, and then you can tack down the end of the loop with your tail. I hope you enjoy making this special pattern. Be sure to check out the written instructions on my website. The link is below in the description box. See you next time!